on with the scaling that matching my inexperience and the ton of excitement that's going on, it's a challenging package. So I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. I actually got as I mentioned this to Aaron the other day.
Yeah.
I got the sense after our conversation that the buzz around the work and the mission was outrunning kind of your infrastructure in order to kind of address it and manage it. I mean, you just have this phenomenal idea that I think is going to resonate broadly in international settings, and you're just not quite ready for prime time on the picking up the pieces in.
Yeah, that's a very positive way to say it. Yes, indeed, the buzz is outrunning our organizational capacity to handle it. Yeah.
Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, that's a good problem. So all in all,
yeah.
it is all positive. It is definitely a challenge to pull out of that. So yeah, so to jump in, Dan, so Aaron told me that in your discussion you've touched upon the concept of you working on recruiting a board of directors, a board of titans of sorts, for us. And is that correct? So that's I'm coming into this call to see what that conversation is about, what your ideas are, and where we go from there.
Dan,
let's first of all, let me just say that that when I called you guys on behalf of Nicholas Sparks, who, by the way, I'm going to see him as we speak. I'm in the car right now, going up. We're having a celebrity weekend in New Bern, North Carolina, that's raising about $100,000 for the foundation. So actually a little over $100,000. So and there's probably more to come because there's some events going on while we're there. But so I'll actually get a chance to chat with him about this event. And just know that when I called you in the first place, the furthest thing on my mind was potentially being engaged to do business with you, but I'm honored that you think that there might be some value here, and if it's a good match, we can talk about that and kind of go forward, and that'll be great. So that's first. Second is when Aaron and I chatted on the phone, and Aaron, are you there as well?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Or is it? Oh, good. So when Aaron and I chatted on the phone, I basically kind of said the same thing to him, and it's just I can see that in the spirit of the mission of your organization to build it out and be very, very inclusive in not only in the open source kind of philosophy about the organization, but just in the way it was beginning to catch up and build out, that there were. I felt like you were missing a couple of safeguards to kind of protect the integrity of not only the philosophy and the concept and the mission, but even some of the work that you had already done. And I thought there needed to be ways to ensure that certain kinds of things did not happen. For instance, I think there should be ways to ensure that excessive profiteering by third-party players doesn't come out of your design, because then that belies the reason you're there and the reason you existed. And I think there's some market forces that would probably prevent that, but there are also some ways to ensure, I think, that the idea and the ideology of the work and the mission and the machines remains more pure. The second thing I talked to Aaron about a little bit was, if you really want to get way up on the and have, I think, global impact of this thing, I think we need to find a way to recruit in a cadre of either board members and or advisors. In other words, they don't necessarily have to have a fiduciary or role in this thing, but board members or advisors that have high visibility, that have a long kind of history of their interest in issues, world matters, in ecology, in the concept of open source. Maybe that's not critical in my view, but they'll adopt and adapt from your vision of that. And also, but what they bring to the table is A, credibility, high level of credibility, and B, almost immediate access to pools of money. Because the only way, in my view, you're going to be able to sustain this is through some large, and I'm talking about $1 million and multi-million-dollar level grants and gifts, and or a connection with a handful of sustaining angels, and maybe both. I'm not sure they're necessarily mutually exclusive ideas. And so then I think if we get our technical house in order and we get all of our IRS stuff done and we get that, and then we hold that up, and then I think you take the buzz that's around the organization and try to get into as many doors as you can. You use some of your relationship that you developed over the TED conferences. You use some other relationships that we would build out. I told Aaron, I'm just really disappointed that my good friend John Denver, who was not only a friend of mine, but I was chairman of the board of his foundation, and I just wish John were with us, because this is the kind of idea that he would just crawl all over and not only bring money and resources to it, but bring connectivity to so many people worldwide.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody turns on a phone call from John Denver. And so we need people on the board who no one will turn down their phone call. Mm-hmm. And once and so that's where I think that's the missing piece to get you to the next level. You have this incredible entrepreneurial focus on the mission and on the machines, and your kind of charisma and your kind of excitement and energy around this organization has brought it to this level. But to get it all the way off the farm and still be connected to the farm, we need some players who can instill the value of this concept in a world market.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
So then that's where my head is on it. I mean, let's clean up the technical side. It's not going to take too long, and then let's start thinking about it. But this thing needs to be done with care and with consideration. This is not like a football game where you get a lot of chances to score. We're only going to have one or two chances to get this right on the first go round. Your buzz is only going to run so long until somebody has to reach out and touch something tangible and some successes. And so in order to get that, we need some test sites. We need somebody to come in and underwrite putting 10 machines in some villages. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we need the kind of energy and the access to revenue or to funding and support streams that will turn the buzz of the excitement and the creativity of the idea into the hum of machines working in villages. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not an ad guy, but that's beginning to sound like one.
Yeah.
And so we need to get some folks behind us to drive this thing to a higher plane. Now, my role is not to necessarily call those people on the phone. I mean, I have to be connected to a fairly small list of folks that could help you out. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that once we get ready, I can call Nick Sparks and say, Nicholas, these guys are ready to do something. I think some nice support might be helpful. I don't know what he might write, but I believe he'll help. But more important, my role is to make sure that we position ourselves to go to those folks. I mean, no one can sell this concept better than you. Mm-hmm. And so it needs to be continually kind of charismatic leadership but showing that we have a meaningful, thoughtful, and dynamic infrastructure that works behind it. And I'm not talking about building out the 20 people to run this thing. I'm talking about building as we need to build with the support levels that we need to support, that need support in order to get us to the next point. So my job is the organizational development component, and that's kind of what I do is, I'm building Nicholas Sparks' foundation. I'm kind of the point on it right now. Ultimately, I'll pass that off to others to do and build another one, and I'm building a foundation for Jim McClain, who is one of the premier golf professional teachers in the world today, who has 12 golf schools, golf academies all across the United States and in the Caribbean. And I'll build gyms out and then go somewhere else and build another one. So what you would be paying me to do is to, in essence, guide this infant to its late teens.
Yeah.
And then that's what you pay me to do. And then over the course of the next 18 or 24 months, we'll be positioned to be what I call structures for success. In other words, we'll be structured with the appropriate players around the table and with the appropriate platform of functionality to succeed at higher and higher levels.
Mm-hmm. What does that structure of players and functionality entail?
Well, I think it's going to entail, first of all, succinctly stating some short-term and mid-range goals that we want to achieve that people can get their arms around and that a financial outcome can be attached to. So, for instance, when you and I spoke a few weeks ago, you talked about a round number of $2 million. Well, okay, if we had $2 million, what do we have? Okay, if we had $8 million, what do we have? If we had $16 million, what do we have? So the first thing I think comes to some specifics around scale, and then by getting the specifics around scale, then you can go to the players and say, if we had $2 million, this is what your $2 million will buy, and this is when it'll be delivered. The $2 million will be delivered. And or not $2 million, but when the outcome of the $2 million will be delivered. So here's what you'll get. Let me do a metaphor might be that organization that does the cows and does the animals, the art organization. If you remember that entity?
I know what you mean, but I don't know what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were all over New York City and stuff.
I'm getting old, but there's an entity where for like $1,500 or $2,500 a contribution, you can provide, 2 goats, 8 chickens, 2 cows, 4 pigs, and a partridge in a pear tree.
You're talking about Heifer Project International? Heifer Project
International? I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I know that.
And so the point is, somebody can load in $2,500 and a whole village has a farm. Has the critters, right?
Yeah.
So then, in our case, if they loaded in $300,000 or $220,000 or whatever it is, we could put those machines or the mechanism to allow them to build those machines in those villages. So it's that kind of transformation. With one other little sidebar kicker, we need to plan a way to sustain ourselves. In other words, we don't want to be continually eleemosynary, because we could run out of our, we could literally be successful, so successful in this placement that we could outrun our capacity to deliver it, because we have nothing built in, as I see right now, to sustain us as we place these things out. So let me give you an example. If I'm going to train a dog to do some specific task for a person with a handicapping condition, and that costs me, and the dog costs me $300, and the training costs me $9,000, right? Then I need to get a donor to come in at $17,000 so that I have $6,000 to buy more dogs and to sustain me as I'm continuing to grow. You follow that?
Sure.
So if we don't build in some type of, even if it's minimal, sustaining mechanism as we deliver, and it doesn't have to be in every aspect. I'm not talking about turning this into a for-profit environment. That's, not at all. But if we don't build in a sustaining environment, then as we become successful, it's costing us more money to be more successful, and we're having to go find that money from third-party sources, and that's not a recipe for long-term success.
Right. What are your thoughts on the organizational form, as in the ecology of for-profit and non-profit? What are you thinking more specifically with respect to the sustainability strategy? How would you see the sustainability strategy occurring?
Yeah, I think it falls into two places. One is the nonprofit wing is what's going to attract the global interest, get everybody kind of heated up over it. I mean, if this was a purely for-profit venture and non-open source, you wouldn't be attracting the buzz you're attracting, in my view. So, but we might need a mechanism whereby we have a for-profit venture that, in essence, constructs machines and sells them ready-made. We might, and that could be a for-profit venture that the nonprofit entity owns a portion of or not. We could contract the not-for-profit entity could contract with a secondary for-profit player that we create, in essence, or we buy, or we partner with someone to be that for-profit entity, and we could own portions of it. We could buy part of it, we could own part of it, we could create part of it, or if we wanted to stay a little further away, we could license the use of our open source designs for for-profit entities to make and sell. So there are a variety of plays, and they're not mutually exclusive.
License?
And so
you suggest if the products are all open source, how do you see the licensing mechanism occur?
Well, I think you could open source the design, but have a licensure requirement for anybody that builds and sells them at a profit. So, for instance, let me use an example. Let's say you're putting on a high school musical, and you want to use somebody's music that they wrote. While it's not open source, you might have to modify it a little bit for a singer's voice, or you might have to change it for the length of the play a little bit, right? So if you were doing that performance and you were going to just not charge any money and just doing it because you were a high school and you wanted your parents and the parents of the kids to come hear it, either the licensure to do that would either be low or it would be, in many cases, free, because it's about the art, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're going to put it on in a big stadium and you're going to charge everybody $100 to come see it, and you're going to use my intellectual property, that's a different discussion. And so I guess I'm suggesting that there's some balance that probably in your philosophy, and I would not disagree with this at all. There's probably some balance towards more open than less open, but yet balance, I believe, is something that would be an advantage to the concept, the idea, and the organization going forward.
Yeah, the way we were considering that balance would happen is that we publish plans under the distributive economic business model. That means the business models are free. However, if you like to use our branding and identity, then there would be contractual relations that are more specifically defined.
Yeah, and so that's one decent mechanism, and then and then of course the branding issue becomes one of determining value in the brand. But I think there are others. Like, for instance, I think there is a value in you're going to get some over the transom contacts. In other words, somebody's going to call up open source or email you or email Aaron and go like, hey, we want to do this. We got some money and we want machines and we want to do this. And you're going to say, so if we're not, as an example, capital, either in or prepared to build the machines at that time and deliver them, there's some third party who will. So then if we layer that over the transom for a third party person, then there should be some play coming back. You follow that?
Sure.
Because in essence now we have moved from an open source provider of intellectual properties and machine plans and how to build them and training. We've moved from that to, in essence, a broker. So if we broker, there should be fees associated with that to sustain the other not-for-profit activities that we are more interested, quite frankly, in doing.
What about the concept where under our, the latest thoughts I was having about the deployment and massive replication would be that we actually create something known as the OSE campus. So basically an education institution for entrepreneurs, so for distributive enterprise training, where we would actually train people to set up these so-called open source ecology microfactories. And we can get, I was thinking of just a simple thing such as maybe agree upon, well, 1% share of their profit goes back to the nonprofit. That could be one way that could fund the continual development of the open source development platform. That's one way I could see that happening.
Yeah, and I'm open to that. I think that is a good way, and I think there are places where 1% is right, and there's places where 5% might be right. So all I'm suggesting is there's I think a broader continuum of the potential of this idea. And lastly, on this part of the subject, from my just kind of early thinking, I want to go on record and say I don't know a lot about you guys yet. I trust you, and I get a good feeling about you. I was in California this week. I was talking to my daughter about you, and I said, this is just such a creative idea. And I said, I feel like these guys, their heart's in the right place, and they're really trying to figure out something that could be incredibly huge and make a real difference in people's lives worldwide. I said, I like that, And I said, so I'm trying to figure out, where we're all, how it all fits together. But the last thought I had on this notion was, so the brand ultimately, if we were successful in branding it as open source, in the distributive model, as I understand it, there's some dependency on the downstream distributors to develop markets. And yet, I think in today's world of a more centralized focus that drives market into central, like you go to Google, right? You don't go to distributors of Google. You go to open source ecology. If that becomes the brand, then that's going to be the collector of the markets. And if it becomes the collector of markets, then there is a value proposition to distribute the market to the distributors. Follow that?
No, say that again. So if we identify ourselves as state your point again, please.
Okay, so let me say it in a slightly different way. So one way is let's take an example, not the only one, but what you described. Let's say we do the distributive marketing model, and you've got a distributor out there that now has to go out and build his own market. Although we've got a deal with him, and if he uses open source ecology, we're going to get 1% of his gross or net or something, right? So that's one way. So now these distributors have to go to the places to sell it, right? Hello?
It's more. I see it as far as the distributors. We're focusing much more on the localized markets that are appropriate for wherever place that fabrication or production facility is located. So I look at it more as the markets will be pretty much assured because we're producing high value items that meet needs, and the marketing function is going to be lesser in importance in that kind of scenario where it's more about social marketing and serving of real needs, and the standard marketing function goes down in importance.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm just suggesting that a lot of that is going to come through your channel and be funneled into those places.
As in,
so then my point is, if you're the center of funneling that out, and even making decisions about where those distribution centers should be, or might serve better if they were in those positions, that there's a value proposition associated with that. That's all I'm saying.
It's, I guess another way to say it is we're leveraging our social capital.
Exactly. That's a much more concise way of saying it. I wish I'd have used those terms. So, I mean, it's just like, let's say right now I'm going to see Nick Sparks, you know. So we've got all these people coming in. How do we get them there? We got them there through Facebook and Twitter, but some of them, instead of doing a $5 or a $10 click-through donation to some of his philanthropic interests, are paying $5,000 to come and experience a celebrity weekend with him, right? So, but how do they get there without Nick Sparks? Answer: they don't get there.
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess, I mean, I'm responding to kind of specifically your point about is this the, you know, what would you do differently, or how do you think about this standpoint of structure? So then, to move that discussion a little bit further downstream, then we've got this level of players who are kind of high level board members meeting, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, maybe 4. They're working with us on connecting us into global economic and global political environments that gets our process, you know, in a position for broad distribution. And all of a sudden, it begins to, we get 2, we get 3, we get 5, we get a country, we get some big organization underwriting it, we get ExxonMobil coming in and picking up big chunks of it, and we get, you know, and it just continues to scream as everybody realizes that for, quite frankly, not very much money, we can help communities build to higher levels of survivability, much less, you know, civility.
Yeah.
And by the way, the real underlying theme here that actually attracts me greatly to your idea, our theme, the real idea here is that, and I think, by the way, and I wish we had, I mean, we at some point in time we'll want to help someone to help us phrase this properly, but you know, what the world really gets out of this is more stability, right? Because as we stabilize communities and build them into more civil entities, they become less apt to be to create conflict with one another.
Wow.
And so there's a huge leveling of the playing field worldwide that occurs as we reach a critical mass of having our community building equipment placed in communities in need.
Wow.
That's pardon my French, but that's a gas idea right there.
Wow. I'm glad you see that, because that's very clear to me that about the potential to impact a lot of significant political change, social change, boiling down to stability of areas and decrease in resource conflicts, improvement of human relations in general. That is what this is after. Mm-hmm.
And so now let's take this another step up. Now we're talking about Department of Defense budget. I mean, this thing could be, come on, this thing could be massive. But in order to do it, we've got to look different.
Uh-huh. You're saying Department of Defense budget as in this is a real solution for peacekeeping?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be?
Well, I agree with you.
Why wouldn't it be? You know, we're not giving them fish. We're teaching them to fish and grow rice and build dwellings that'll withstand weather. We're teaching them to drill for clean water. I mean, water. Come on, water. Water's big.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's going to be bigger. Water's big and it's be your next thing to think about after this becomes global.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is. I mean, pardon me for being, speaking in hyperbole, but this is I already know this is a very, very big idea.
Yeah.
So we'll structure this thing out so that you can take it to the next level. I mean, I'll be on to something else, but you guys are smart, and you're young and energetic, and all you need is the right folks around the table and get this thing, get a few test sites and get it communicated properly, and people are all over this.
Yeah, and how do you assure for the alignment of the potential board members with the mission so we don't get into mission drift and compromises of any sort?
There's some risk associated with that. There's some risk associated with if you bring in a board. It's a two-edged sword here. If we keep it small, internal, you and a handful of others, we don't, and we bring in boards of advisors, we don't get quite the same level of attention, and so raising the money is a little harder, but if we bring in a high-powered board of international thinkers who have access and influence, they think, and we're going to have to, deal with some of that. But I think the mission's pretty clear, and I think it's pretty pure.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to do? We're going to make plans, teach people how to build them. We're going to build some machines. We're going to teach others how to build them. We're going to have others put them out there. And in the meantime, we're going to work crossways, both ways, to try to get these into more communities worldwide to stabilize this planet and give people a higher quality of life. And so, I mean, I don't know how we drift too far away from that. I don't see anybody standing up and saying we need to do something about those darn whales.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that. I don't see it getting.
I mean, I guess the devil's in the details. It's the operational plan for how do you truly enact distributive economic models. I mean, there's a lot of details to that. So, I could certainly see how people may differ in opinions of how to do that. I mean, the things like the licensing issues or whatever the nitty-gritty details are of spreading this work are, I could probably be sure that the ideas are rather iconoclastic. I mean, in one way very simple, but in other ways also quite iconoclastic. So I think that key to that is educating the board members, making sure that the rapport and understanding is there to our satisfaction. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, clearly. And by the way, we're just, here's a blinding glimpse of the obvious, but some of our funders are going to come in with some very serious ideas about where and what they want done with it. In other words, if we go out to a private foundation or we go out to any public governmental source and we say, we need $2 million to do X, Y, and Z, they're going to come back, okay, we'll give you the $2 million, but we don't like X so much. We're not thinking that Colombia is a good spot. We're thinking more about, Central Argentina. Or we're not so interested in South America. We'd like to see more, Western Africa. We want the Ivory Coast. Or they might come in and say, oh, you know what, we're thinking this would be a great, and we're going to go like, really? Seriously? But we'll have to make a decision on whether we want, to make some adjustments in our tactical play in order to get to a larger strategic win. But that's like fishing in mosquitoes. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, I don't think this is going to be a bad thing, but there's purity and then there's 99%, and so there's some adjustment in the game typically necessary, and we've got some growing to do. I mean, we're ultimately going to grow from the birthing of this idea into a real steep growth pattern into leveling off at some level, at some part of sustainability, where we can grow without burning up our resources too fast, and without where we can mature successfully rather than outgrow our all of our clothes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty exciting stuff, and I mean, of all the ideas that are kind of bouncing around out there, I mean, I don't think we've got any competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's why, the Fed conference was interested in having you there, and we'll have you back,
Mm-hmm.
So, but we gotta get this idea we gotta get people around the table that can turn the knobs to really tune this station in and give us optimal chances of success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's the level of interaction that a high-power board would have with the core team? I mean, what kind of report can we expect? And how much time would they be willing to spend?
I don't think much. I think the core team. I think they will interact with the CEO and anybody you put in front of them. I think you would be, and I think that they would basically be, they would be taking your guidance on the concept, the idea, and the mission, and we would be taking their guidance and influence on how to get it in global markets.
Mm-hmm.
And the money, of course.
Yeah.
So we're basically going to go to them and say, here's what we want to do, and it needs some refinement, but not much, and we know we can do this, and here's what we need. We can't grow too fast, but between now and the end of the year, we need $5 million, $8 million, or we need somebody to underwrite enough distribution of machines that at a price range that we can build them and get them out for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the nature of these, would the nature of the board would be primarily to look for nonprofit resources, or it could be anything. That's all open at this point.
I think it could be any. I think there's some corporate money that'll go behind it. I think I think we can find a couple of world, kind of global interested foundations to get behind it. I don't see Bill Gates writing a check for all of it, but he's a very global guy, and so if we got to him, he might load in with something, and it's a kind of an idea that I think resonates. So I mean, everybody thinks Bill Gates just because it's off the charts large, but there are a lot of organizations with a lot of money, and there's a lot. I think there's interest in this beyond the philanthropic community. As I've indicated, I could see countries and departments of some government, testing this somewhere, doing pilots on this somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But we got to figure out how to get in and navigate those waters,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it starts with getting a real clarity on kind of what we want these folks to do, and then sitting around and opening up looking around the world, and probably need some international involvement, and beginning to do a little networking and some web working out to see if we can find who we can. We need to get the biggest player we could possibly reach first, and then have them help build out the other players.
Mm-hmm. So actually, that player would be active in the development of the board.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that type of strategy you've used before when you did this kind of work?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get high enough on the pole, I mean, it's not the call that you and I make, I mean, if we could get, pick the biggest name you can think about, and or that guy that you already have some connection with, who did the Linux guy, the Red Hat guy.
Mark Shuttleworth, for example.
Maybe not Red. Yeah. Okay. So then, who's the biggest guy he can get, or do we know, or do we have? Can we get somebody bigger than that on the phone? and I mean bigger in influence, bigger in visibility, bigger in I mean, you know, in their ability to kind of, you know, move the marble, you know, broad kind of global experience. I mean, if you could pick up some of those names, maybe some political figures, not a lot, you know, and then they go like, you know, who we need on here, you know. If we get somebody from the UN, if we get, oh God, who's the guy? We used to hook up with a guy, is it Noel Brown? It was with the UN environmental group. I mean, if we get, you know, we could nose around and pick up some big names, and if we could interest them in this idea, we'd be off and running.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take a year. It's going to take a year. This is not a 20-minute deal, you know. I mean, this is not a sit around one afternoon with coffee and figure it out. I mean, this is going to, we're going to, I mean, it's not like all day, every day for a year, but it's going to take a while. We'll clean up our infrastructure first, and then it's going to take a while to get these players around our table. But if we had our first initial board meeting with a bunch of big players, and you know, Q1 of 2013, it'd be a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
My mind kind of gravitated toward the idea of a test case. Dan, can you hear me all right? Dan, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Hello?
Dan, I just wanted to see if you could hear me because Marcin asked me what my thoughts are.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I think I really resonate with everything you're saying, and I'm gravitating towards the idea of getting a test case in place, trying to really get some data points on what can be achieved with the proof of concept we have at this point and we'll have within the next 6 months. So trying to get that funded, I think that's going to show a real world example, get some data points around that and document that, I think is going to go and move mountains for us. So that's one thing that really sticks out in my mind.
Oh wait, you're talking about the development technique applied rigorously to one of our products, or you're talking about the board member prototype?
Marcin and Dan, I think the rigorous product development technique is one thing that should be done very well, like focused on, and get a lot of quality out of doing that and document it and get some data points and evaluate that program, but also getting some of these machines in a community setting or in the context of an enterprise and really evaluating what we can do this far. And it can be really simple. It doesn't need to be too complicated at this point. But I think a couple test cases could also be a real strategic thing to do at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't disagree. This is Dan. I don't disagree with that. And what strikes me then is if we package that, then let's go sell that and get the underwriting to make that happen. So, you know, we got to design, build a machine, document it out, ship it out, you know, find a place that'll take it, ship it out, teach them, train them, you know, what does that cost? And so, you know, and you know, we'll probably miss on one side or the other, but, you know, so then let's find somebody who believes in this enough to underwrite that. And now all of a sudden we come back and say, look what we did. Here we were, you know, 6 months ago, we dropped these machines in here, and here we are today, and that's what we're talking about. And now all of a sudden we're off and running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if I could also jump in with another idea is, Dan, there's a lot of orientation to do. You know, I could volunteer. So Marcin probably doesn't have a ton of spare time. He's got so many things going on. I'd love to volunteer to bring you up to speed with a lot of the things that we have going on. Because there's more than can be documented and easily understood with even just a blog post. So I told you that I would send you an email, and I'm working on trying to compile all the exciting things that are happening right now. For example, we've got Dan Schellenberg He's making a refined version of our compressed earth brick press, and he's sending it to a community he works with in Africa. And they're all ready to receive that and put it in place in the development of an enterprise. We've got work in Guatemala that's emerging from another TED Fellow. We've got Brianna Kufa developing the iron worker in Pasadena, California. There's just so many things that are emerging. So I think behind the scenes, I'd like to focus on getting you up to speed and an orientation on everything that we're working on. Does that sound good to you, Dan?
Absolutely. That would be really, really helpful. I've actually prefaced every discussion we have with, I don't know much about what's going on yet, so I'm kind of daydreaming with the caveat that I'm daydreaming on what I believe to be possible based on just the magnitude of this idea and how it's just such a clean-cut, simple idea that it's just, it just makes all the sense in the world. To me, I assume it resonates with others. I know it does with Nick Sparks. He's a pretty smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should set a time. I'm really off. I told you I was doing a Nick Sparks thing this weekend. I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I just pulled off to have a more meaningful conversation, not driving down the road. So from my perspective, Aaron, if we could get together in the next week or so, and you could, really bring me up to speed, give me some stuff, and then what I think might be helpful is, schedule a time for me to come out. If you guys want to move forward with my involvement and sit down and talk about that, I could easily over the next week or so put together some ideas of cost of what my time and how to use my time effectively and efficiently. It's not like a full-time job. It's like, I pop in, I get some work done, I do some work here, I pop out,
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, just so you know, every contract that I have ever done forever has a 30-day no penalty, no foul exit clause. In other words, even if I say, I think I'm going to be working with you guys for the next 8 or 10 months, and here's what that total price tag might be. I think I want to be in town. We're going to meet this many times or do this or that. Then we start that work. But if for whatever reason you decided that it's not working for us or something's changed, then we just part friends and I go home. It's not like you owe me any residual money. You follow that?
And that's on
in other words, all of my contracts are at will and as we go. They're not contracts where you owe, where you have a long-term obligation.
Yeah. Okay. So what I heard is that your interest in this involvement is to help get us set up, and then you move on. It's like you yourself. In what manner do you see yourself being involved in the longer term?
Well, I'm open to that. I'm at a time in my life where I can fortunately do a little picking and choosing. I've been in this business a long time, and so I'm actually open to that. I've had folks that I started out with John Denver as a client, went on his board, and stayed on his board for years, and so sometimes I just, my work's kind of done, and I just kind of mosey off, and other times I'm either asked to stay around, or I say, hey, you know what, I like this, and I'm not charging anymore, but I'd like to stay involved, and so it's it'll evolve as we see how we work together and whether or not I'm the right horse for this hunt.
Yeah. Now, are you considering serving on a board yourself, or how are you looking at that?
Well, you don't want me on the board in the beginning because that conflicts with some issues. You can be paid. You can't be paid for serving on the board. You can be paid for doing work on a board. But I don't bring enough name power. So we need, before you put me on the board, we need to put people on the board with some thump, some sway.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if I was Tom Brokaw, then put me on the board. If I was Al Gore, which might be a great board member, by the way, put me on the board. but until we can't get Al Gore, don't put me on the board. Now, at some point in time in the future, there might be a role for me on the board, and that's fine. We can talk about that. But what needs to be, this thing is orchestrated and well thought out, not just, we don't pick low hanging. We're not ready to pick low hanging fruit. We got to get up to the tall trees first.
Mm-hmm. Now, do I understand correctly that Nicholas Sparks was interested in being on a board, or is there any?
Oh, you know what? I actually kind of doubt it. I mean, I kind of who knows? I said to Aaron the other day, I said, who knows? Nick Sparks might want to be on this board, but he's got young kids and busy, and he travels all the time, and he's got a new TV deal, and he's got movies going on, and so his time is pretty precious. So I don't know whether he would or not. I mean, I would not hesitate to ask him.
Yeah.
And it's been hesitate to say, hey, would you like to serve on this board? It's 2 meetings a year.
Yeah. And can you give me a little bit of idea what the search process looks like? So you would do your networking. At which point do I come in and to actually talk to them? At how far into the game?
Oh, as soon as I would suggest that you and I and Aaron and anybody else that you think is capable or would help to the end of the conversation, get around a table and close the door and vet out some names and figure out what access we have to them. But at some point in time, you have to stand up and charismatically, which you're good at doing. I mean, you were very charismatic on that little TED conference, about, hey, I bought a tractor, the tractor broke, and then I fixed the tractor broke again. Pretty soon I was broke, You're compelling and it's your idea, and nobody can present it with the same passion, even though I'm passionate about it, so there. But it's not the same. So the principal, which is you, will ultimately have to go and recruit those folks to sit around this table, and that's where you will instill the basis of the concept and the idea so deeply that we won't get a lot of mission creep.
How long does that process typically take? Once, say, the people are in the room and I'm there, what kind of time frames have you seen happen?
It'll take 3 or 4 months once we identify somebody to get a face-to-face with them. After you get the face-to-face with them, some people will stay in the room, count me in. But some people will say, give me a few weeks and I'll get back to you, and then we'll do the assessment of the numbers. We don't want to go live with a board meeting until we have enough humans around the table so that there's a critical mass of energy in the room. And then once we have that, we'll go live and invite them in and have a meeting, and then we're off and running. And
Is that
if
part
we
of
only get 3 or 4, that's fine. And we'll build out from there, but we need more than 1 or 2. And that process will take as long as it takes to get, we'll start with an A list, and if we're not successful with an A list, we'll move to a B list. If we're not successful to a B list, we'll move to a C list, and even the C list will be a tall list. It'll be a big list. So then how long does it take? If we get hits on the A list, not too long.
Yeah.
I mean, just
when you
think
say
about it. I mean, pick out one of your biggest heroes in any field in the world, and if they called you and said, Marcin, I'd like you to sit on the board, you'd say yes, right? That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and when you said the synergy in that room at that point, does that mean including our development team, so they actually see that? Oh yeah, we've got all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll. That's when we break out the dog and pony shows, when we show them all the work we've got going. We've been telling them this all along. That's when we show them how deep we are in the project that Aaron just described. That's when we show how the distributed network is beginning to form. That's when we show how the open source concept is getting confirmed. That's when we show how we're getting, and then all of a sudden that's how the excitement and the vision is really built.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that makes all sense. So yeah, well, I guess the next step would be to get a meeting, get briefed on the latest developments, and continue the discussion with Aaron, starting with Aaron.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, tell you what else I'll do, Aaron and Martine. I'll put together a rough proposal of what it would cost to get me involved for a few months, and then let's see where we go, and then see how you feel about that, and we'll go from there. And then you'll have a price in mind, and we'll go from there. Okay?
Okay. Well, that sounds good. So in any case, yeah, I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done with us on the articles, the bylaws, the 1023 form, the nonprofit incorporation stuff. That's well in process, and I think we're in good shape on that. So yeah, we appreciate that, and look forward to.
I'm glad I could help. I'm glad I could help.
Further. Yeah. That's useful. So
Yeah, this sounds like fun. You can obviously tell I'm enthusiastic about it, and I'd like to do it. I hope it works out. If it doesn't, I wish you guys the absolute best, because I think your idea is a big idea. I think it's a needed idea. I think it has potential to improve people's lives planet-wide, and not many are able to ever say that. So, well done.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, well, thanks
Thank you
a lot.
so much.
You got my number. You got my numbers. Call me if you need me.
Okay,
Thanks, Dan.
thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Aaron. Bye bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Aaron.